This is HBR News number 524. Emiru attacked at TwitchCon. W's for Pennsylvania and Arizona, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. Hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I am your host, Brian. I'm joined by Dr. Randomcam. Hannah Wallen might be here. I don't know. She hasn't shown up yet. I know that she didn't make the last show because it was some scheduling thing. So hopefully, she'll either show up or we will find out that, there's a good reason for her absence. What were you going to say, Mike?
I said hello.
Oh, hello.
I know that's unusually loquacious for me. To say such things. Hello.
You caught me off guard a little bit. Yeah. So. Oh, and there's Hannah. See, hold
Yay!
on a second. Let me just.
Hi.
I gotta plug her in. The audience can't hear you talking. Just give me a second here. No, it's okay. I'm just glad you made it. Okay.
My headset to my new computer is more of a effort for the computer than just plugging it in. So.
Yeah, gotta go with those drivers and stuff.
Yep, all that.
All right.
That
well,
jazz.
Yes. So we have a Hannah. We are good on
we
that.
Do.
Okay. So anyway, with all that said, please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section on this week's HBR News. We're going to be looking at some news regarding parenting reforms or co-parenting reforms that are currently in progress in Arizona and Pennsylvania. TwitchCon drama, which I think is going to be a pretty big story. A DoorDash drama that has happened and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So as you see here, I am displaying the website TikTok, where we're going to be looking at basically some DoorDash, some reactions to the DoorDash story. If you guys don't know the DoorDash story, I'll get to it. It's the last story here. It's
fucking mental. I'm gonna go so mad on this shit.
Yeah, we'll look at it afterwards, but I think that it's definitely like sort of in line with the Emiru story as well, which is also a bit crazy. So yeah, if you want to join us for the extra TikTok discussion, TikTok talk, I guess, then you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord server where you'll be able to watch all of the additional content, which includes lots of other patron shows as well as works in progress shows. I know that people got the Ragening early, for example, the extra long Ragening that we put out. And, there's all kinds of groups and activities and things like that. So, it could be cool, especially if you care about the same issues. It'd be nice to be around other people who also have similar beliefs. So that is feedthebadger.com/subscribe. If you want to send us a message at any point during the show, you can do so either through a Rumble rant or a super chat, or the best way to do it is at feedthebadger.com/justthetip, because YouTube takes a considerable chunk of the super chat. And if you don't want to give Google your money, which I would understand, then it's probably better to go through feedthebadger.com/justthetip. All right. And if you don't want to wake up in the morning to find it, we be yeeted from the internet, go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com. Yes, I know, a lot of websites. All right. But anyway, with all that said, let us get into today's stories. So this one's a little bit of a follow-up. Because as you know, Antifa has been like a thing on everyone's lips for a while now. And when I say a while, I mean like since the year 2019, maybe before. I mean, I know it's definitely an old idea.
Kind of a century, as some would insist that ever since fascism came around, there's been anti-fascism, which isn't the same as Antifa, but yes, it is. But no, it isn't. I'll get into it when you're done right up.
So we have here an interesting story. Apparently, there was a book called the Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, which was pretty popular. Here's a picture of Minneapolis DA Keith Ellison holding his copy proudly. So not like a fringe thing, popular with some people that have, let's say, that have some that are in high places. But anyway, recently though, in early October 2025, the Rutgers University Student Assembly in New Brunswick, New Jersey, introduced a resolution titled "Resolution in Support of Professor Mark Bray's Academic Freedom and Free Expression." Mark Bray, in case you guys don't know, is the guy who wrote the Anti-Fascist Handbook. The measure urges University President William F. Tate IV, cool name, to publicly defend Mr. Mark Bray, a history professor known for his scholarship on anti-fascism, including authoring the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. It calls for Rutgers to reaffirm Bray's academic freedom, provide him with legal safety and logistical support amid threats, and clarify that political disagreement alone does not justify discipline. The resolution emerged in response to escalating harassment against Bray following President Donald Trump's executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. The controversy intensified after the Rutgers chapter of Turning Point USA launched a Change.org petition on October 3rd demanding Bray's dismissal for allegedly promoting left-wing terrorism and endangering conservative students through his Antifa affiliations. The petition, which garnered over 1,800 signatures, cited Bray's past statements labeling figures like Bill O'Reilly as fascists and advocating militant actions. Triggered by death threats, supposedly, doxing of his home address, and even a blocked flight attempt, Bray relocated to Spain with his family, shifting his classes to online classes. The student resolution was approved by the Rutgers University Senate on October 17th, highlighting tensions over free speech and ideological clashes on campus. So, well, let me just summarize. So, in summary, the guy who wrote the book that Antifa and basically just revolutionary anarchist communists all over the world use as their guide to determining what Antifa is and who is a fascist, had a job as a tenured professor at Rutgers University for years, and now that Antifa has been designated a domestic terrorist organization, he suddenly feels threatened and has left and fled to Spain with his family and now does his courses online. And the school is trying to, the student assembly, but I think it's the school itself, the Rutgers University School, is essentially trying to start a resolution in support of his academic freedom and free expression. And so he is the victim, according to himself, of death threats and doxing. The Antifa guy. Okay, but anyway, and he said himself he's not a terrorist, but that he does engage in anti-fascist activity. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it. I could say some more, but I'm gonna let this one go. Go ahead, Mike, if you wish.
Yeah, many of you may be thinking what I'm thinking. Surely Antifa doesn't exist. And Antifa never existed. It can't exist. Therefore, this man's extremist activism doesn't exist, and neither does his book. So what's the problem? What are you even worried about? It doesn't matter how many hard copies of his book you hold up with his name on it. He could just go, it's not mine. I didn't write that. This sort of thing isn't my bag, baby. And I suppose the argument is, yeah, but we're living under a fascist regime ever since 2024, and they'll prosecute anyone they think is in some way associated with Antifa, so just so they can destroy their enemies. Okay, so I have to ask, what do you mean by fascist? What do you mean? What do you mean by fascist? How do you not know what fascist means? What are you, a fascist? No, sir, I am not. I personally, I would like the smallest government humanly possible, with the absolute bare minimum of power and influence over the people of any given nation. If the government is to exist at all, I want it to keep the people of a nation safe from the people of other nations. What? So you are a fascist? And there you have it. That's what they mean by fascist. At least that's one of the things they mean. Fascism is prioritizing the people they're supposed to be serving over the people they're not supposed to be serving. The primary function that a state is supposed to have. These people are not interested in curtailing government overreach. What they're interested in is curtailing millionaires and billionaires. They've made it crystal clear. They want to use the bloated monster of the government to steal from hardworking, successful private individuals and their families and their enterprises. And it's not just the rich. They also want to steal from men, especially white men, especially straight men, no matter how poor and downtrodden those straight white men are. I know some of us think they've put the woke away, that they're no longer focusing on race and gender politics, and that they've reverted back to the Bernie Sanderisms of the millionaires and the billionaires, specifically the billionaires, now that Bernie and his fellow communists are themselves millionaires. But let's not fool ourselves. It's just that they have already secured their institutional crusade against straight white men. They've already populated the schools and the mass media and the courts with their oikophobic racists and their misandric sexists. So now that that's secured, they're working their way back through the evolution of communism all the way to its roots. See, there are some straight white men who have, despite all odds, become financially successful. And we can't have that. What do you suppose they intend to do about the billionaires? How do you suppose they're going to stop them from being billionaires? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? They want the government to tax them so hard that they can never get that rich in the first place. And when they're done with the billionaires, they'll come for the millionaires and then the thousandaires. And they won't stop until no individual in the country has more than a handful of pocket change in digital social credit, and all the money in the world is in the hands of the government, and the government does with it what they see fit. And no, they do not call this fascism. And to be fair, it's not. It's much worse than fascism. It's communism. It's exactly what every communist state has done, and it always, without exception, results in destitution. But there's an easy way around it, you see. Just don't call it communism. Call it anti-fascism. Job done. Yes, we want to abolish wealth. We want to abolish private property, and we want to abolish families, just like Marx told us to. But we don't call it Marxism. We don't call it communism. Oh, wait, shit, a lot of us literally do call it communism. They're not even hiding it. They're open and proud about it, and they can gleefully declare it in public and face no consequences for their support of 100 million murders. But those people are just the people who actually call it communism. They're just a fringe minority. They don't represent us. Don't worry about it. As a matter of fact, they don't exist. Communism doesn't exist. After all, it's never been tried. Only anti-fascism exists. Oh, but Antifa doesn't exist, even though it's just anti-fascism, which is the only thing that does exist. Is that clear? What we're witnessing is what happens when pathological liars are backed into a corner. They can't stop lying. This is how so many sitcom episodes are set up. That's how you can make hundreds of episodes of the same sitcom. It's just a character tells a lie, and then to get around it, they have to tell another lie, and then another, and it all becomes this comedy of errors. They have to stick with all of these lies and all of the lies on top of those lies, and then they can never admit to any of these lies. So they have to keep stacking this house of cards. And until it reaches this breaking point, and the only option they have left is to flee to another country. like Mark Bray did. And good for you, Mr. Bray. I mean it. If you don't support the prosperity of the American people, and you'd rather their wealth and property is handed gift wrapped to everyone else, if you think Americans live on stolen land, thank you very much for putting your money where your mouth is and leaving that stolen land and going somewhere else where they have no history of colonialism, let alone fascism. Where is it you've escaped to again? Spain? Good. I'm sure you'll have a whale of a time in Spain. Just do remember. Best of luck explaining your sudden flip-flop on this most crucial of matters. And yeah, don't even make eye contact with any of the local senoritas, or you'll be charged with femicide. I could smell your flop sweat from here, sir. It is salty and delicious, and I'm here for it.
It kind of makes me wonder what else he has done besides write that book. And the reason I wonder that is, I don't know if the younger people listening have heard of a book called The Anarchist Cookbook, but that book flat out had recipes for explosives and other things that violated federal law if you would have them or create them. The recipes themselves were not necessarily illegal, and the book didn't constitute like conspiracy to commit a crime. It was just information. Just like if you study chemistry, you have that same information. It's whether or not you use it to commit crimes that determines whether or not you're a criminal. And so they never prosecuted the original author of the Anarchist Cookbook, despite the fact that many of the things in that book could be used to commit crimes if somebody was so stupid as to do that. And some people were. And then, of course, there's a difference between the U.S. and, say, other nations, particularly European nations. So there have been some people in the UK for that have been prosecuted for selling copies or having a copy of that book, but not in the U.S. Not just for having. There was one student who was prosecuted, but was acquitted after arguing that it was for use in a role playing game, basically. Character information, basically proving probably to a DM this is a real possible thing that can be done, which I could see a gamer doing that. And I'm sure there are people that have. I'm not the only one that's looked up that information out of curiosity just to see, what's there, with no intention of doing anything with it because it would do god awful damage and hurt people. So you don't actually want to do anything with it. But it's interesting information to know, right? And being interested in stuff like that's not a crime. Knowing information is not a crime unless it's protected information. Knowing information that's not classified, if you're not, eligible for it, that's not a crime. Sharing information that's not protected is not a crime. Obviously, there's some information. For instance, I can't share my patient's information with y'all. That would be a crime. But a book like this, unless he's out and out, like outlining, here's how you should commit these crimes, and creating a conspiracy to commit crimes using that book, he must have done something else that he's fleeing for, because they wouldn't be able to prosecute him just for providing information on things like here's how to hide your face and here's how to make makeshift weapons and blah blah blah. They can't prosecute for that unless he's advocating in the book, let's do this, here's the plan, and people are following the plan, and then he can get prosecuted for conspiring with others to commit crimes. But it really does kind of make me suspicious. What else did this guy do besides write a book? It just something stinks there. There's the smell test that he's running away because he's afraid he's going to be prosecuted for writing a book. Nah, I'm not buying it, especially not going to someplace in Europe where he is more likely to be prosecuted for writing a book than he would be in the United States. So, and then again, I've seen the Anarchist Cookbook. I haven't seen the Antifa Handbook, so I don't know what's in it.
Well, I can tell you what's in it. First of all, this book is available on Amazon. So it's not like a book that's banned or anything like that. There are books written by Martin Luther, like not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, the guy that started the Protestant Reformation, that you can't get on Amazon. But you can get the Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook on Amazon.com. And the thing is that, first of all, this book is in high circulation on college campuses. Usually these teachers that write books, they get distribution on colleges, so it's not just available at Rutgers. It has become the go-to book for people who want to be Antifa or otherwise just revolutionary communists, because that's what they are. This is just Marxism with a different it's like rebranded to be a little bit less stigmatized, I guess.
So
and that's why they say we're not communists, we're just anti-fascist.
He's selling the book, right?
Well, no, Amazon sells the book. His name is attached to the book. So,
yeah.
But here's the thing.
So it's I'll bet he's a communist, but I'll bet he's making money from the book.
Of course he's making money from the book. How much do you think the book costs? I'll tell you. You can get the book for $10 on Kindle or $20 on paperback. And,
oh wow, that's expensive.
Yeah. Here's another thing too. So I think that this is like the way these people operate, okay? They are allergic to accountability, but they definitely want action. So what he does is he writes the book and he acts like a mild-mannered, college professor, an intellectual. He's like, I don't engage in any anti-fascist action. I don't go to protests. I don't participate in any of the violence or the riots. In fact, I don't even think that's happening, or if it is, it's not because of my book. But a portion of the profits from the book goes to anti-fascist organizations. They go to supporting the legal battles of Antifa. So they don't go to Antifa soldiers on the floor. They go to the lawyers that protect them. And if you look at, for example, the governments of states like Washington or Oregon, they're completely infiltrated with these people. So it's not just like the guys in the black that are, wearing masks and throwing Molotov cocktails. It's like the lawyers, it's people in the government, it's people in the courts, it's the judges, it's everywhere. So his book's money goes toward, that's why I showed you guys Keith Ellison, by the way. Because this guy's in Minneapolis. Like, Minnesota isn't even as paused as like Washington, Oregon, and California is. Like, not nearly as paused, but this is mainstream for these people. So the guy himself probably not breaking any laws, but the way these people operate is it's always like this, stochastic way of doing things, right? He writes a book, he puts some opinions in it. It's apparently full of like commie buzzwords. There's no formulas, or it doesn't teach you how to make bombs or anything like that. What it does do is it affirms I'll read one of the reviews on Amazon. Okay, militant Marxist. This is a negative review, by the way. Most of them are positive reviews. So because people are stupid, or there are people running cover for this book. So one of the negative ones: militant Marxist communists rebranding themselves as anti-fascist to provide a more respectable image. Definition of fascism obscured and altered to include patriarchy, racism, authoritarianism, capitalism, nationalism, meritocracy, etc. Author's definition can apply to all forms of any government since the formation of civilization. Definition can also apply to Antifa itself. Author rejects Western liberal notions of free speech and democracy, assumes anti-fascists have the right to no platform fascist speakers, regardless of the institution that gave the speaker that platform. It makes delusional claims of moral superiority to fascists because of recent history, ignores murders orchestrated by Stalin and Mao that make Hitler look like a saint. I've read everything Marx wrote, including some personal letters, and there isn't space to refute the discredited and obsolete ideology advocated by this author. So, again, it is not a handbook in the sense that it has instructions. It's just a piece of agitprop designed to get stupid people to think that their resentment towards people who have more is justified. And it basically excuses that by making these arguments from systemic oppression or whatever. And the fact that he ran away to Spain because his views were exposed as being unpopular based on the results of the recent election, that only further cements things. And, Spain is probably not that unsafe for him, to be honest, because it's probably one of, if not the most feminist country in the world. And that means it's the most leftist. So he's probably going to be safe. And I mean, unless, they I don't know, like he gets, I don't even know that they're coming after him legally. He just ran away and claimed he was being harassed and received death threats. So
yeah, that still makes me wonder, did he do something else and he's just using the situation? Because this doesn't sound like something that you would have to flee the country over at all.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe.
I wonder if he's some kind of sex pest. It's not like a communist or a male feminist to be some kind of sex pest. That's what I'm saying. If you go into Spain, you're gonna have to hold back on your sex pestery because,
for sure.
Like I say, you're gonna get fucked up every orifice if you so much as breathe in the wrong direction in Spain. So yeah, you may have fucked yourself there, Mark.
If he's in Spain, he doesn't have to be a sex pest. He just has to.
Just has to what?
He doesn't have to do anything. He just has to be male in public.
Yeah, that's basically it. Exist as male.
Spain feminists are so horrible. They're they're incredibly touchy, and they've gotten laws passed that are the stuff that we're complaining about in the UK looks like a play date in comparison to the way that feminists in Spain have gotten the laws there changed. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so this is I'm gonna just say this is good news insofar as at least this isn't like mainstream. I mean, yeah, the school's gonna try to protect him, and that's fine. But remember, this is another thing that I think is worth thinking about. The school is invoking freedom of speech to protect someone who doesn't believe in freedom of speech. Like he like in the book says that you should not give, like, it's essentially the Karl Popper paradox of tolerance, where essentially Karl Popper argued that you should not tolerate the intolerant. Of course, he was doing that so that he could like essentially have control over the town square, so that he can like no longer he could ban or otherwise censor people who he doesn't like. And the commies are all about that because they don't care about hypocrisy. They care about hierarchy. They care about who has the power. If it's them, guess what? They make the rules. So anyway, so he left, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I thought it was worth following up, especially since the whole country was on fire by these people and continues to be to some degree. So I thought it was worth a follow-up story. So
it was nice of us not to allude to the No Kings protest, but we kind of did, didn't we?
Well, the boomer hippie protest, yeah, whatever. I mean, I was more like, yeah, I mean that was a nothing burger anyway, and I'm glad about that. But it's just more affirmation that they're 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 not as strong as they appear to be, or at least they might seem. So this is just what
Yeah.
I think. I mean, we'll have to see. Who knows? But yeah.
We're
Anyway,
in the meantime, good riddance to bad rubbish and to Spain. We apologize for the
yeah,
dumping of trash in your country there.
yeah. All right. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. I got some super chows I should look at, and then we'll move on to the next story. So we got one this. Wait, is it yesterday? No, 2 days ago. I guess. I should read it because I don't know if Allison did, but we got one on Sunday at 10 p.m. 10:22, and it is from Morning Glory Milking Farm projection for $5. And they say, I thought something funny a few days ago. Do women have a subconscious sexual fantasy as described by Morning Glory Milking Farm, where they project this image of mythological godlike beings onto men and then find themselves upset that men aren't these superhumans? In other words, are women sexually frustrated by their own unrealistic expectations? Maybe these expectations were better fulfilled before the 19th. Hope this super child gives y'all a slight chuckle. Have a good one. Well, thank you for
I
that.
mean, it's
Now you just put that stupid book in my head again.
yeah,
Oh God.
it's barely subconscious at this point, especially in light of Morning Glory Milk.
Yeah, right. Like what do you mean subconscious? It's
And
pretty
to
front
be
and
honest,
center at this point. Yeah. Um
there's a bit of truth to that though. And it's we don't have the physical strength of men who are the same size as we are. And I'm saying this from the perspective of a gal that was taller than almost all of the other gals in my class by the time I was 13. Um, I wasn't necessarily physically stronger than all of them, but and in fact there were gals that were a lot stronger than me, but the strongest of them still could be overpowered by about half the guys we knew. And to us it is like a superpower when there's an object that we can't move at all, and one of you picks it up and totes it like it's nothing, and being picked up, physically lifted up off the ground, as if we don't present difficulty lifting, is another one. Like that does seem like a superhuman power to us because most of us don't have it. And again, like I'm from the perspective of someone, I used to lift people when I worked in nursing homes when I was younger, but my limit was still lower than the men that I worked with in terms of how big of a person I could lift, how much somebody could weigh, and I could lift them by myself. And whether or not I was a little bit injured after that, and so it does to a lot of women. There's some somewhat of a tendency to be mystified by things that men are able to do, but I don't think that's the whole story, right? Most girls never face the level of accountability. Even once they reach the age of womanhood, they never face the level of accountability for themselves that a man does, even that a boy does at, say, the age of 16. Most women don't have to be any more responsible for themselves than a 14-year-old boy. By that I mean, if I had married a guy that didn't have an ex-wife and a child support payment to make, and I had just relied on his income and called myself a homemaker, and whether I did a good job at it or a bad job at it, it wouldn't have mattered. I could have done that, and people would have not called me a deadbeat for that. They wouldn't have suggested that I was dead weight in the marriage. They wouldn't have suggested that I wasn't living up to my potential. They wouldn't have suggested that I wasn't exercising accountability for myself. They would have suggested that I was doing what women normally do, and I had a perfectly respectable lifestyle, and it was his job to support that lifestyle, and my job to take care of the home. And men, if men did that, they would get called deadbeats. They would get called dead weight. They would be accused of mooching off of a woman. They would be called weak. They get ridiculed for it. My husband is a better homemaker than I am. I'm not a good housekeeper. My house looks like a train wreck right now. I'm a decent cook, but he's a better cook than I am. And there's a lot of stuff like that he's better at than I am. And if we had a situation where we had a disabled kid, or we had 8 kids, or something along those lines, where it would make sense for one person to work and the other person to manage all of the complexity of the home, he would have been better at it than me. But if he had done that and I had maintained my workaholic status, there would have been every side of our social environment would have come down on us for it. Our families, our friends, everybody in my workplace, any guy that he knew, like, there would have been this combination of, well, what's that guy doing? Can't he work? Can't he handle a job? Things like that. And, acting like he was living the easy life. Whereas when a woman does it, we get told it's the hardest job anyone's ever done by people who have probably never, ever even looked at the inside of a sewer, or the inside of a garbage truck, or dealt with the fun aspects of working as a gastroenterologist or a infectious disease specialist or an oncologist who has to tell people they're going to die. Like, I don't think it's the hardest job, right? So women get this combination of unaccountability and ego stroking and lack of awareness of other people's lives, like solipsism. When they see men handling things that women are not raised to be equipped to handle and may not be naturally equipped to handle, it does look like this mystical, magical superpower, especially when they're completely unaware of their lack of accountability. And they see men taking accountability for things that, they wouldn't even consider, much less take accountability for. I don't know. It's more that, I think, than the physical stuff. So, yeah, that's why women treat men like gods and then get disappointed when they turn out to be human.
And if anyone needs any context as to what Morning Glory Milking Farm is, nope, I'm not going to offer any explanation, and I would implore my co-hosts not to offer any explanation either. You're going to have to look it up.
Don't look it up.
Don't look it up. And we
it's
have a
so stupid.
Let's just move on. Let's please just move on.
Yeah, we're gonna move on. So I also got a super chow from Great Indoors for $5, and he didn't say anything, so I don't know if that was a mistake. But if it wasn't, thank you. If it was, tag at Badger Livestreams in a comment with what it is you actually wanted to say, and I will read it after the next story. So we're gonna move on to the next one. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. All right. So just as a little bit of a setup for this, there was some changes made in, I think it was Tennessee, where they basically passed an equal shared parenting law, which well, it wasn't like a forced thing. It was basically like treating equal share parenting as the default when a child custody case comes up. So
Yeah, it's
instead
the
of
typical
defaulting to
equally
the
shared parenting law. And it
huh
allows, usually, it's the typical equally shared parenting law. It usually allows, if there's mitigating circumstances, the judge can make a different decision. If the couple wants to make a different agreement, they can. If, somebody wants to fight for a different circumstance,
right,
they can do that. It's just if the couple decides in their divorce to go with the state default is equally shared parenting. And
yeah,
that's the template for equally shared parenting laws across the nation.
right. So in if I remember correctly, in is either Tennessee or Kentucky, there was a great like basically there was a they were looking at the divorce rates from from the time that the law was changed, and filings of divorce declined by 25%, which outpaced the national average of 18% after they started from essentially like default shared parenting as the when there is a divorce. So which means when the women don't think they're going to get the kids and all of the other stuff that comes with that, like child support, they're less likely to divorce their husbands. So it's almost like the incentive to divorce is reduced. And as a consequence of that, it looks like a number of other states are at the very least examining or moving on that path of starting to re-examine the child custody laws, to assume essentially like shared parenting as a default. So following that lead, Arizona has long emphasized shared parenting through its 2012 reforms under ARS and the 25403.02, which mandates courts to adopt parenting plans maximizing each parent's time with the child consistent with the child's best interests while avoiding gender-based preferences. In 2025, HB 2296 was introduced to further strengthen these provisions, explicitly requiring shared legal decision making and equal parenting time unless rebutted, alongside mandatory mediation for custody disputes to reduce court battles. This builds on the state's preference for near equal splits, with courts prioritizing emotional and physical child health. As of October of this year, the bill remains in legislative review, but 2025 family law updates have already integrated modern child support adjustments for shared arrangements, signaling ongoing momentum towards presumption based equality. Pennsylvania's reforms, so this is basically specifically about Pennsylvania and Arizona because they're like the furthest along, even though there are other states looking into this as well, are accelerating with House Bill 378, signed into law on June 30th, 2025, effective August 29th, which streamlines child custody factors from 16 to 12, consolidating elements like parental cooperation and alienation risks to better support shared arrangements. Courts must now provide written custody factors to parties within 30 days of filing, promoting transparency and negotiation towards equal time. A related push via Representative Jamie Flick's amendment for a 50-50 presumption narrowly failed, 103 to 99. So there was like 103 in favor and 99 against, but garnered bipartisan support, highlighting growing advocacy for default shared custody absent unfitness. HB 1412 also eases modifications to existing orders without proving material changes in key scenarios, facilitating adjustments for balanced parenting. These changes align with national trends, as Pennsylvania's guidelines already adjust support for 40% plus overnights, but full presumption legislation remains pending for 2026. And so I thought, because, and I'm sorry, I apologize which state it was. It was either Tennessee or Kentucky, that I think it might have been Kentucky, that had a significant drop in divorce filings after the shared parenting or the presumption of 50-50 parenting went through. And there's a YouTuber you guys probably heard of named Alexandra Grace. I was talking to Mike about this before the show started, who typically talks only about like dating stuff and like sex, female dynamics and things like that. But he has lately been making more and more videos talking about men's issues because he's seeing a lot of like the modern women online, like complaining about men and dogging on men and misandry kind of mainstreamed. And he's been taking a more and more of an interest in the men's issue space. And so he actually said that he saw like that data of the when you basically give 50-50 custody by default, women are far less likely or significantly less likely to file for divorce, and so they're more likely to work with their partner, and in order to like essentially try to like make it work out for the child instead of simply filing the divorce papers. So, and he said that we owe the men's rights guys a great gratitude, and for the work that we've been doing, which has been thankless largely. And so I just wanted to say we got a little bit of a shout out, and I'm glad this is happening. And yeah, so I want to like leave it to you guys to give your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this one, but if in any part it's removing some of the incentive for women to divorce their husbands and retain full custody of the children, it sounds like a good idea. I think the reason there are so many divorces and so many children raised by single mothers, I think it stems from the same reason. The fact that women have this incentive. I think if men were instead given this incentive, they would probably capitalize on it as well, for want of a better word, at least largely. We're only human, all of us, and we're driven by incentives more than we're driven by this concept of rights. I mean, animals don't interact with each other based on rights, do they? They don't have a concept of rights. Only humans have a concept of rights. As much as we should consider the only real rights to be the right to be essentially left alone, the right to have your body to yourself and not be mutilated, your property to yourself and not be stolen, and indeed your children to yourself and not be stolen or mutilated. The concept of rights is too easily misinterpreted as the right to be given free shit at other people's expense. But every living creature evolves and adapts based on incentives. And that's really what we mean when it comes to being given free shit. Women don't deserve any of the free shit they're being given, and they wouldn't crave it were it not given to them by the government. It's like any other addiction. Prehistoric humans were not afforded any of these addictions. They were never addicted to drugs because no drug is so abundant in the prehistoric wild as to become an addiction. Not even sugar. The only sugar we could get in the prehistoric wild was in the form of fruit, and even fruit was only available scarcely and seasonally. And complete and exclusive access to your children was never afforded to us in the scarce environment in which we evolved. And in the same way, it was never normal for women to have exclusive access to their children, or even the lion's share of that access, not for as long as we've been Homo sapiens, or even many of its precursors. It's only the advent of a romantic, chivalric society and a government that upholds it that has seen fit to exclude fathers from such basic, dare I say, human rights. So yeah, maybe let's knock that shit back a rung or two. It's not normal. It's an affected quirk of modernity that's only upheld by a series of agreed upon lies. I don't know. I don't have much more to say on that. This isn't really my forte because it's all legal stuff. I'll let Hannah get into it. This sounds like Hannah's.
Yeah,
Hannah, go.
I actually wrote an article about this a while back, and I think we've done a few shows on it. But it's interesting. Historically, when men did have more legal rights in regard to their children than women did, men didn't divorce their wives left and right. But we also didn't have no-fault divorce. And so if you just abandoned the marriage without cause, you had some sort of penalties. You might still have to pay maintenance unless your ex-wife remarried. So so there is that. But they still didn't lose custody of the children. They could take the children and go, and they would have to pay maintenance and and so on. But they still might be able to monopolize time with the kids, and they didn't do it. In the meantime, parental alienation is something that is done far more by women than by men today, and it's partly because it's far more difficult for a man to succeed at it. But that's not really the only reason. When men want to be aggressive, they're usually more um, physically aggressive or economically aggressive. When women want to be aggressive, they're usually more relationally aggressive. And so they're more likely to do things like using false allegations to try to win custody battles and things like that. But this type of legislation is becoming more common across the country, and that is a good thing. The people who are lobbying for that legislation desperately need you. They need you to write to your legislators about the importance of dual custody, of equally shared parenting, and the importance of maintaining a father's ability to parent his children, not just with his wallet, but with his mentorship and his presence, his nurturing and love and care, being the strength that his children see and the accountability that his children see. And yeah, financial abuse is majority female, Gabriel, and it's done in a way that most people don't recognize as abuse, right? They recognize it as financial abuse if a husband earns all the money and objects to the wife getting a job, but then won't let her spend, have any spending control, right? But they don't recognize it as abuse if the husband earns all the money and the wife gets 6 or 7 credit cards in both of their names and runs up $60,000 in debt when that's more than he makes annually. It should be recognized as abuse if she does that, but it's not. Right? They don't recognize it as abuse if she runs them into debt under other circumstances either. Whether it's medical bills that are from hypochondria or just gambling. Like, women have run up debts on their husbands in a variety of ways, and then done nothing to contribute to paying them off, right? And so there are sneaky ways that don't get counted. And I think if those things got counted, you would probably see more like 90% of it being female perpetrated and 10% male perpetrated. But since that's not the case, and we see things like, well, most debt is in men's names, therefore men are the ones that are irresponsible spenders. But we never look at things like the credit card's in his name, but whose signature is on all the receipts? Because when you sign your own name. And of course now it's even easier because all you have to do is run it through a machine at the cash register or use it online and put in the little 3-digit number on the back, and nobody's signature is on the receipt. So you don't know who spent the money. You know that it's in his name. So it is definitely, but it's not the type of financial aggression I'm talking about. Like men, men when they're aggressive, they're usually not trying to beat down a woman. They'll buy their way into somebody's company and then take over, things like that. It's not the same. Put everything in his name. There's the story that just circulated online of the guy that put everything in his mother's name, so his wife couldn't sue him for it in the divorce, which I thought was brilliant. But in any case, there's a major history of the National Organization for Women fighting against these types of laws. So when I say these people need you to write to your legislators, I really mean it. Like, make sure that the people who are involved in passing laws in your state know that the people of your state want the children of your state to have the benefit of both parents, and the benefit of, in particular, not being raised in fatherless homes. Send them the information you can find online. Shoot, I can't think of the name of it. The Fatherhood Initiative has quite a bit of research that you could send them, and I believe they have a website that their name is in the website name, and I haven't looked it up in quite a while, but I will say, like, the National Organization for Women has fought paternal custody going all the way back to in the 1970s, when joint custody was under discussion, as opposed to the mother being considered the primary caregiver and therefore the primary custodial parent, or the custodial parent. And they've fought that all the way through to today, when it's equally shared parenting. And they made the same arguments the whole time. Their arguments portray all men equally as deadbeats, abusers, and liars and cheats that are just trying to get out of paying child support by monopolizing time with the children, as opposed to women who are monopolizing time with the children, not to get that child support, apparently. So their argument basically is that women love their children and men don't love their children, and they just use them for money. In the meantime, they argue that men are going to abuse the children if they have custody, any custody at all. They argue that men are going to abuse the mother if the mother is forced to share custody. And they argue that men will use custody to get out of child support, even though women who owe child support are more likely to not pay it than men who owe child support. Women who owe child support are more likely to owe less than the men, because they earn less. And women who don't have custody are more likely to not visit their kids than men who don't have custody. Meanwhile, when men don't have custody and women do, about 40% of mothers in one study here, it was reported in frequency of visitation by divorced fathers, differences in reports by fathers and mothers by Sanford H. Braver and group, that about 40% of mothers had reported that they had interfered with the non-custodial father's visitation on at least one occasion to punish their ex-spouse. So not because it was bad for the kids, but because mom was mad at dad. Between 25 and 33% of mothers denied visits altogether. 90% of the violence and kidnapping that they'd seen in this study was sole custody situations in which the sole custodial parent feared losing custody status. So Equally shared parenting rights protect kids' lives. They protect kids' access to the other parent, and they make it more difficult for the other parent for the agitating parent, the alienating parent, to alienate the child. Similarly, in Surviving the Breakup by Joan Berlin Kelly and Judith A. Wallerstein, um, it was reported that perhaps half of mothers valued the father's continued contact with the children, which means about the other half didn't. 1/5 saw no value in this whatsoever and actively tried to sabotage the meetings by sending the children away just before the father's arrival, by insisting that the child was ill or had pressing homework to do, by making a scene, or by leaving the children with the husband and disappearing. And then in between was a large group of women that had many mixed feelings about the father's visits, resenting the father's gift giving, his freedom from domestic responsibilities, which is bullshit, because when the kids are with the dad, he has domestic responsibilities. And these irritations were expressed in their difficulties in accommodating the different schedules of the other parent to make the visit possible and to protect the child's access to both parents. So they would forget appointments, and so on. They would insist on rigid schedules for the visits, refuse to permit the visit if the father brought along an adult friend. Just little mischievous things. And I saw this with my husband's divorce. His ex-wife was one of those women that didn't want her husband in the children's lives anymore because she didn't want to deal with him in her life. And so she tried to do things like insisting on conditions that she couldn't legally enforce, tried to make him leave me, lied to the family about us, and just did a whole bunch of other things. In the 7 Years in Hell case, when the father got protective custody of the child, the mother began leveling false allegations of intimate partner and sexual violence. She spent 7 years dragging him through the bowels of the criminal and family court system to try to wrestle custody back. And at one point, even made a false rape allegation, changed her story 3 times as to when and where it allegedly occurred, because he had evidence of what he was doing all the time. By the time she made that allegation, we were actively guarding him. Like, all of his friends were taking turns making sure that we scheduled our time with him, our hangout time with him, so that he was never alone. And he was actively making sure that, he went places where there were cameras. He got receipts when he went places. He could prove where he had been and what he had been doing, so that nobody could catch him in a moment where he couldn't, and get the court to agree that he had been somewhere else in doing something else. And it took 7 years of that to get her designated as a vexatious litigant, so that she can't bother him anymore. And this kind of thing occurs regularly across the country. So as we see this improvement happening, and as you keep writing to your legislators and keeping the pressure campaign up to protect the rights of both parents to have equal time with their children and equal opportunities for nurturing and caring and teaching their children how to be adults, it's also important to emphasize that there needs to be parental accountability when one parent denies visitation, when one parent tries to alienate the other parent, that there needs to be some sort of penalty. It needs to be just as serious to not let the other parent have their time, to deny custody, as it is to kidnap the child. and it needs to be just as serious to try to use false allegations in a divorce case or a custody battle to try to wrestle custody away from the other parent, as it is to commit the types of crimes that the individual is accusing the other parent of committing, because it's just as serious as kidnapping. My friend from that case that I was a witness in went to jail 5 different times for overnight visits, or at one point a whole weekend. Was denied his medications, was treated like a criminal by the police, and was severely traumatized by the situation. To this day, he still has PTSD symptoms from being arrested over and over again, and from not knowing when the cops were going to come and knock at his door at 3 o'clock in the morning to take him away. So it's and his daughter has PTSD symptoms from that. Like this, she saw her dad hauled off in cuffs repeatedly and didn't understand what was going on because she was little. So this impacts not just the men involved, as if that wasn't bad enough. It also impacts the children. So I'm glad to see that this is happening, but it is not a reason to stop pressuring legislators to treat fathers fairly. It's very important to keep that pressure campaign up and to maybe ramp it up. And it's also a good time to start a pressure campaign to and get them to enact accountability for women who make false allegations in these types of cases.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Let's take a look at what people are saying, and then we're going to move on to the next story. But yeah, overall, I think this is a step in the right direction. But again, like all things, it's a process. So, okay. So Zeranx gave us $10 and says, if there was ever a greater bit of evidence bolstering my position of getting government out of marriage, family, and children, do that, and all involved likely do better towards the marriage front, which begets healthy children, healthy families, and healthy society overall. Yes, it's almost like that's the most important thing. And then Meredith G gives us $5. Thank you, Meredith, and says, HBR News 524, only slightly related to the stories of the night. Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, is doing a poll on political violence. And surprising to me, but not to me, is early results are finding the group most prone to supporting political violence is not lost young men, but educated women in their 30s and 40s. Be on the lookout for the results of that study. I will. Let me just write that down really quick. Richard Barris, the People's Pundit.
Yeah, you know what? The first thing I thought of was when I read that. Do you remember the guy that was filming on campus? There was a protest going on, and the protesters were engaging a little bit of dumbassery. And I can't remember what it was about exactly, but the professor was sort of middle-aged, maybe a little older than middle-aged, like probably old enough to have grandkids if she wasn't a cat lady. But in any case, she's working with these students, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, just in the start of their adulthood. And as this individual is on their own campus in a public place filming what is going on, she comes over and starts hassling them, and then starts advocating for some muscle. Can I get some muscle over here? Basically to assault the person filming to get rid of them. Even in just little ways like that, they engage in violence.
Well, that's
like
the thing I was
every
going to say is
little
that, yeah, I think women, like these educated women, are more likely to advocate for violence because they're not the ones risking anything. They're usually
right.
asking men to do violence on their behalf, which makes it easy. How many women were on TikTok saying, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it when it comes to assassinating basically anybody? It wasn't just Trump. It was Elon Musk. It was Charlie Kirk. It was anyone. They were like,
Yep.
who's gonna do it? That means I'm not gonna do it, but I want it done, right? So yes, it makes sense that people who have no skin in the game, have nothing to lose, only have to do is complain, and then somebody else might step up on their behalf and do it, are going to be more likely to do it. So it doesn't really
Yep.
surprise me. But
And they're more likely then to get arrested for it because they're the ones actually engaging in the violence, and it'll get chalked up
yes,
as male violence,
yes,
even though they would never have done that if a woman hadn't asked them.
right,
And
exactly.
Imagine if this is scaled up to women voting for wars that only men have to fight in. It's
It
still,
is.
Imagine that.
it's still men doing the violence. It's convenient, isn't it?
Yep.
Xeranx says that was Melissa Click from Mizzou. So I
Yep,
guess
thank you.
Missouri University, maybe. But in any case, yeah. I will say this: there's a video that I made about that the whole female proxy violence thing as well. I believe it was we have to talk about quote male violence end quote because I don't believe that there is such a thing as male violence. I believe that the overwhelming majority of violence in the world is proxy violence on behalf of women. So I think that's on
Yeah.
the Badger live streams channel, but it might be on the Honey Badger Brigade channel. So you'll have to look
The main Honey Badger
for it.
radio channel. Yeah.
Yeah, Honey Badger radio channel. Yeah.
You're all a bunch of misogynists. How dare you say any of these things?
All right. Moving on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. All right. So, and here's one of the big ones everyone's been talking about. So during the annual 3-day event known as TwitchCon, a San Diego-based convention centered around the live streaming platform Twitch.tv, prominent streamer pictured here at Emiru was sexually assaulted. Emily Beth Shunk, better known as Emiru, is a popular cosplayer and streamer with over 2 million followers on Twitch TV. She is also a co-founder and content creator for the gaming media group known as One True King. During a fan meet and greet at TwitchCon last weekend, a man walked right past the line of fans, bypassing a number of other checkpoints. With TwitchCon security being nowhere in sight and with seemingly nothing to stop him, the man grabbed Emiru's face and attempted to kiss her. Thankfully, Emiru's personal security guard intervened immediately and forcefully removed the man from her sight. The man then slowly walked away from the scene, again with no TwitchCon security in sight. As a quick aside, there are many people online stating that her bodyguard was permanently banned for defending Emiru over this incident, which is false, but not far from the truth. Emiru's former bodyguard was permanently banned from Twitch-related live events after stopping and detaining a stalker at a previous event, so not this event. Twitch's response was originally lackluster, citing that the assailant was given a 30-day ban from Twitch.tv, revealing that they knew exactly who the individual was. Finally, when pressed by Emiru's manager, they changed their statement to say that the attacker was banned from the premises, permanently banned from Twitch.tv, and that they were working with law enforcement. Twitch CEO Dan Clancy, who was finally forced to leave his goon cave to give a statement, spoke with hack journalist Taylor Lorenz, and when asked how Twitch is prioritizing safety at their
I
conventions,
love you, Mike.
he said the following: "The safety of our creators is our top priority. The challenge we face is a challenge in today's society. It's not limited to Twitch. It extends throughout our society. So, our problem is the world's problems because men exist. I do think that when you're live streaming, in many ways, that you control your community and you can ban people. You can make it so that those people who you don't want engaging with you and participating with you aren't there. What happened yesterday was something that we care deeply about, securing this environment. We're looking very closely at everything that happened here, and I care deeply about Emiru. She's a friend of mine, and so I want to see how we can support her." Emiru eventually released her version of events, noting that her attacker was allowed to walk away and even exit the building, a fact that was later backed up with video evidence. She also spoke about the immediate reaction of nearby Twitch staff, which was to joke and laugh about how they didn't see anything happen. She also calls out Twitch's claim that they immediately caught the attacker, when in reality, he was walking around the area for hours before being detained. Emiru stated that this would be her last TwitchCon and that she encourages other creators to make it their last as well. And I basically wanted to reiterate because I think this is like, for me, what seems to be what's going to be the effect of this. So like these kinds of things can happen when you're dealing with, this kind of like environment, right? Um, and it's unfortunate, but it can happen. If you're like somebody that's famous, you're gonna get weird fans. You're gonna get people who don't have they have boundary issues, whatever, right? They're just going to socially awkward people, and these things are going to happen. But my issue is not that, because that's just part of life. My issue is with what the reaction to that is going to be and how this incident is going to be framed. So I think the fact that Dan Clancy sat down with Taylor Lorenz is a telling thing, right? And also bear in mind the people who run Twitch, they're all scumbags. Like they are best friends with Hassan Piker, the guy at the end of every one of our videos that talks about MRAs being machines. And not because he zapped his dog, because I don't give a shit about that. It's because he basically said that we deserve 9/11, and he called for the death of people who own property, and he wanted the streets to run red with their blood. That's, I think, a little bit of a higher priority. And when he did that, by the way, Twitch celebrated his birthday and they gave him like a 24-hour ban or something. Like it was nothing. So what we're looking at here are people who are going to look out for each other in whatever way they can, and they're going to do what Hollywood did when the Me Too movement happened. They're going to blame men everywhere instead of just holding the individual accountable that did the thing, and maybe anyone else who was involved that basically allowed this guy to slip through the cracks. But the fact is, these things will happen, and I'm sorry that happened to Emiru, but you're gonna have to like you can only be responsible for your own safety at the end of the day. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I give you guys the floor. It looks like this is going to be a long sausage. Go
ahead. I suppose a lot of you will be getting the same distinct sense that I'm getting, that this is something of a storm in a teacup. Every headline I've seen about this story has used this loaded term, sexual assault. And yeah, in some ways technically it is, but only because a man hugging and kissing a woman who doesn't want to be hugged and kissed, is kind of technically a sexual assault by modern standards. But if that's the case, then it's something children frequently commit, hugging and kissing, and it's something frequently done to children. Every time one of your relatives, usually a grandma or an aunt, greets you with a hug and a kiss that gives you what we might call an ick, that means you've been sexually assaulted, right? In which case we have ourselves a problem that extends far beyond TwitchCon. And look, I know we're all vying to apply some sense of accountability to Twitch, given Twitch's general aversion to accountability, especially in the wake of dog electrocution gate, or whatever we're calling it, or indeed regularly calling for political murder gate. I get it. We'd all like Twitch to take an objective glance at what its biggest hitters are doing with the millions they're making. But I mean, Jesus H. Christ, can we learn a lesson from the smear merchants in the mainstream media about not writing sensational headlines for the sake of clicks? If anyone is anyone going to present this story as Twitch streamer unexpectedly gets hugged and kissed at TwitchCon? No, because that wouldn't get the clicks. It wouldn't make it sound like the light drizzle in a teacup that it actually is. And don't get me wrong, there is a real issue here, and it's that security at TwitchCon is so lax. It's lucky this man was only interested in a hug and a kiss. He was interested. If he was interested in violently shanking her in the neck, he would have been perfectly able to do so 5 or 6 times before any security intervened. And yes, that sort of thing can happen. Christina Grimmie was a 22-year-old singer who 9 years ago was shot at a meet and greet after a concert by some nutter. And fuck's sake, Dimebag Darrell, the guitarist from Pantera, was shot point blank several times by a crazed fan on stage at a gig. These incidents are thankfully rare, but it raises the issue of how stringent security should really be at such public events. And I really don't know how far we should go. Should every gig have like metal detectors positioned at the front doors and also backstage, just in case? It's the same hot issue as the school shootings. Like, how many contingencies should be controlled for in the event of the rare occasions where there might be an armed nutter on the premises? I don't know. I don't know how many venues can even afford these kinds of safeguards. And if legendary heroes like Dimebag Darrell are not safe, how the hell can we make it safe for every vapid Twitch thought whose only niche is titillating horny, lonely, desperate men? It's definitely an important issue, one for which it's difficult to find an answer. And it's understandable when the issue gets fired up every time someone actually gets murdered. I'm just saying, it feels like a hell of a slow news day when the issue gets fired up because of a woman who got hugged and kissed. Not murdered or even attempted murder, just hugged and kissed. That's all I'm saying. How often has a female groupie sprinted out of the darkness to hug and kiss a male celebrity?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that, just to add real quick to what you're saying. Remember Sinners in Stardust? Remember that and what happened to that guy that was there. And also, with that in mind, the security acted very quickly on her behalf when this happened. The Sinners in Stardust guy got like absolutely like just piled on by women. There were so many of them, he couldn't tell who was touching him and who wasn't, and no one was able to save him. So it's a. I'm not big on the whataboutism, but it seems like that was just here and gone, and we're probably going to be hearing about this Emiru thing for a while, and it's going to probably they're going to try to start another Me Too. But anyway, that's all. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, and how often does it become an international scandal when a female groupie runs on stage to hug and kiss a male celebrity? Literally never. Even though it happens all the time, even though women are just as capable of stabbing or shooting someone to death. These are the great equalizers after all. If you want to criticize Twitch and their lackluster endeavors, please do. But there are much bigger fish to fry. Please don't forget, one of their biggest streamers is still out there telling people to murder his political opponents. I'm sure that doesn't narrow it down, but you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy who abuses dogs. And yes, the dog abuse is apparently orders of magnitude more scandalous than the advocacy for mass murder of humans. But that's just the world we live in. People are more outraged at hurting dogs than they are about murdering men. And they're even more outraged about a woman getting hugged and kissed. I mean, there it is. It's beyond politics at this point. There's a clear hierarchy here. The lives of men are less important than the well-being of dogs, and even less important than the personal space of a woman's lips. Do I shrug this off with it is what it is? Because no, it isn't what it is. It's a fucked up inversion of what should be, in my humble, outlandish opinion, for whatever the hell that even counts for anymore. I'm not a real philosopher. None of this is humanitarian advice. Ignore me.
All All right, Hannah.
You know, probably enough has been said about the fact that this was a security issue, and it's a pretty obvious security issue, and it is a consistent issue in terms of people getting attacked by crazed fans, and this does happen quite a bit to male performers, and it made me think, not that a performer should ever be expected to put up with that kind of bullshit. There's always somebody that's going to be crazy enough to do that. I think the solution essentially is going to be venues like this need to work with the more famous performers' security teams. Let them have their own security, not give them any trouble in terms of, and protecting their individual, and then they maintain their security on the site. And that should happen. That should happen to, with male and female performers. And probably one of the most interesting and famous incidents of this that comes to mind to me, Michael Jackson in like 1996 in Seoul was in a concert, and he had this during one of the songs that he was performing, he had this like a bucket. It had it was open. It had a platform, and then it had like a fence around him, just one bar, like a circular bar around him that had a couple of bars going down on the sides, and it was lifted by a crane up into the air. And for him, with wind blowing up and everything, make him look cool and stuff, kind of typical Michael Jackson showmanship. And he goes up there, it lifts him up, and he starts performing, and a crazed fan climbed up on the crane really quickly and got up onto that platform. And we're talking, the platform was just barely big enough for Jackson to perform the way that he performs when he's singing. So, his feet might be more than shoulder width apart, but not significantly more than shoulder width apart. So it was very small. And immediately, rather than, freaking out, which a woman would have done, and trying to get rid of this crazed fan, he immediately managed him. He turned him around so that he was facing away from him so he couldn't hurt him, but then held on to the fan the whole time and continued to perform, continued to sing while he was holding this fan in place so that he didn't fall from this crane, and protected him from getting injured until they lowered the crane. They finally got someone there to lower the crane, and then security pulled the fan off of him and took him away and everything. And it's a completely different reaction. He had death threats, and he had some really insane things happen with fans. So for him to respond to one approaching him like that in that circumstance, by his primary concern was the fans' welfare, and not, freaking out and getting scared, was quite remarkable. But and it's not to shame anybody that reacts by getting upset, but this kind of thing does happen to men. Shia LaBeouf had an event in 2014 where he was meeting one-on-one with fans, and it was kind of a publicity stunt that he was doing. I think he had a paper bag over his head. He was, I'm not famous anymore. But as he was meeting one-on-one with fans, a woman came along and sexually assaulted him. And it was more than just grabbing and kissing. It was pretty bad. And there wasn't a lot of discussion about that. I remember we covered it after it happened, but people didn't get outraged like they did over this. And yes, she should have been better protected. Yes, this should have been prevented from happening. Maybe if these convention administrations weren't so busy politicking and trying to protect people from things like Gamergate flags and people saying the wrong thing on the internet, they would do a better job of protecting their performers. But I think the outrage is kind of selective in this case, because it's something that we should care about, whether it's a female Twitch streamer who's famous for being good at games or cute or some combination thereof, or a famous singer or an actor, or any individual politician, and whether they're male or female, whether they're old or young, and whether they're popular with only one side of the political fence, and the other side wants to shoot them in the neck. Like, and crazed fans and crazed haters don't really have a very thick line in between them. So yeah, I guess that's my take on it. Yeah, it's a problem, and no, it's not right that the outrage is that selective.
Yeah. All right. Let me see what if anybody else has any super chats or super chows. But yeah, I mean, we've all, like I said, I just want to draw that Sinners and Stardust thing, and it's definitely like Mike said, a storm in a teacup. I think that the fact that Emiru is like this really petite, delicate girl, I think that really like ramps up the gynocentrism around this whole situation. And again, we already have systems in place. There, when people cross a boundary, there already exist consequences. If TwitchCon didn't take the appropriate measures, that's a them problem. That's not a society problem, which is what the CEO is trying to like point to. That's bullshit. Full stop. So but they should take care of it on in their own terms. And I know that people like Taylor Lorenz are going to use it to essentially make claims about our entire society. So, all right. Anyway, let's
they're
move
going to
on
be
to
like, where were all the men?
yeah.
But
It's gonna be
one of
even
the
though
guys,
again the security stepped in immediately. I saw the video. It was dealt with immediately, and it's just one of those things that sometimes a weirdo gets through, and
yeah.
whatever. But
And if a bystander had done something, people would be condemning him for being violent.
yeah,
If a bystander had stopped that guy and hit him or wrestled him to the ground or anything like that, and he'd been injured, that would have been, then it would have been, look, men are violent.
yeah. Well, the thing is, that's most people's default setting. So when they see stuff like this, it just confirms the bias that was already there. So they're comfortable with that, right?
Right.
Which is why
But
this
then
next
they turn
story,
around and yell, where are all the
yeah,
men, when a bystander does nothing?
right,
So in terms of, what guys listening should take away from this is, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, but there's a lot less risk to you if you don't. So
yeah.
don't.
Yeah, so but again, it's like, we're trying to deprogram generations of this stuff, so it's not easy. But let's move on to the next
Yeah.
story. I thought I picked this because it's related. So you probably maybe you did hear about this, maybe you didn't. This is relatively recent. So on October 12th of 2025 in New York, DoorDash driver Livy Rose Henderson arrived at a customer's apartment for a contactless delivery with instructions to leave the order at the door. She claimed the front door was wide open with the lights on, and the male customer was unconscious or asleep on a couch visible from the entryway, with his pants and underwear pulled down to his ankles, exposing himself indecently. Henderson, feeling unsafe and interpreting this as a sexual harassment or assault, recorded a short video as evidence from inside at the threshold, posted it publicly on TikTok, which revealed the address and details, and reported the incident to DoorDash and police. She described fearing for her safety. Remember, this guy was unconscious or sleeping, and his pants were down around his ankles, stating she, quote, could have been attacked, end quote, and viewed the exposure as intentional given the open door. The videos quickly went viral, amassing over 20 million views, sparking outrage over gig worker protections and calls for better safety measures. DoorDash banned the customer for violating their sexual harassment policy, but also deactivated Henderson's account 2 days later, citing a breach of their privacy policy against sharing videos or personal information captured during deliveries, including inside customers' homes. Henderson followed up with additional TikTok videos expressing frustration and anger, alleging DoorDash prioritized the customer's privacy over her own safety, provided no clear explanation initially, and that police dismiss her report as no crime, lacking intent from the unconscious man. She noted accessing her remaining earnings via a debit card after support escalations and appealed the deactivation, though DoorDash's statement confirmed both parties were banned pending investigation. The story divided online reactions. While detractors accuse her of trespassing, privacy invasion, filming, recording an unconscious naked person without consent, potentially illegal as revenge porn or doxing, and exaggerating assault because, like, indecent exposure is not active harm, arguing that she should have just dropped the food, snapped the photo privately, and left.
Yes.
Actually, I'm going to jump on this one because if that guy had a stroke and ended up in that situation, not the kind any of our dirty-minded listeners are thinking of, but an actual medical stroke or heart attack, and she just took his picture and left, he would have died. If he'd have been assaulted and left in that position, again, if the door was supposed to be closed and it was open, that could have been a sign that something was very wrong. And yeah, it could have been that this guy was just, some dumbass with some kind of mental problem who deliberately exposed himself to this individual. But the first thing that I would have thought of in a situation like that, if the door's not supposed to be open and it's open, is that something bad has happened here. And I would not have approached. I would have looked from a distance, looked inside, and if I had seen that, then I would have called the cops because something might be very wrong there. That would have been an immediate 911 call. And she didn't do that. Right? That's suspicious to me. It makes me wonder if, hypoglycemia. There's another one J.O. Bowles mentioned. And there's probably a couple dozen different medical conditions an individual can have that can cause them to end up in that situation. And then there's also, like I said, somebody could have broken in and sexually assaulted this individual, which she would have thought of if that was a female. But she didn't think of it because she was a female and that was a male. And therefore, she decided that she was the one being assaulted and immediately took these measures. And of all the things, if I was afraid of somebody and I felt I was in immediate danger, my first response would not be to stand around taking pictures or video. It would be to get the fuck out of there. Call the cops and be someplace other than where that individual might have access to me. Right? I wouldn't stand in the doorway and film. And, I understand why she might have wanted to protect herself from false allegations. But even then, there is literally nothing about posting that video on social media that has any kind of protective effect for you at all. Right? Posting that video does nothing but embarrass the individual. And she didn't post that video on whatever social media she posted it on. I can't remember what it was, to protect herself. She did it to shame the customer. So I don't feel bad for her that the DoorDash banned her pending investigation. I think that was perfectly appropriate. And I think that it was perfectly acceptable for them to penalize somebody for violating their policies regarding their consumers' private information being published like that. I certainly wouldn't order from a company if I thought that their delivery people might start taking pictures of my home and posting them online. Right? That would be. I'm not paying somebody to come and do that. So I hope that this works out, that they figure out what happened, and if the guy was being a pervert and there's some law he violated in doing that, accountability, obviously. But if she opened his door and filmed him and then posted it online, I hope she gets treated the same way as if a man did that to a woman. And I hope most people have more sense than if they run across somebody who's unconscious like that in a situation where they were told something that should lead them to not expect to find that, not expect to find an open door and an unconscious person, that they would actually immediately just call 911 and describe the situation, even if they were afraid to approach and find out if something was wrong, to at least get first responders' attention on the situation in case that individual was actually in distress.
All right, Mike.
So yeah. Dropping the food and leaving is all she should have done. If she was to take a photo at all, it should have been of the package being dropped at the doorstep, and that's all she should have done. She didn't even need to do that. It depends on what she's required to be proved to do. But yeah, dropping the food and leaving is absolutely all she should have done. How the fuck is that even controversial? Where is even the controversy in that? Especially given the outcome, especially given that DoorDash also banned the customer. Now, even given the apparent controversy, it's not as though the consequences were only exacted in one direction. Both the customer and the employee were punished by being banned from the service, even though the customer did nothing wrong. There could be a goddamn orgy going on the property, and it's exactly zero of this bitch's beeswax. Is this not part of the training that DoorDash gives its employees? If not, it fucking should be. Okay, I'm gonna have to play the as a card against my usual better judgment, but as a postman, I used to be a postman, and even postmen, even as government employees, even as royal employees, no less as they used to be, even postmen are absolutely not permitted to trespass on anyone's interior property. They're allowed to go as far as wherever the letterbox is and not a step further. Why would they be? If the door is wide open, you drop the package just inside the door and you go, that's it. Thank fuck I don't have to ring the doorbell and waste my time waiting for this douchebag to answer the fucking door. I know there's this stereotype that postmen tend to just fuck off without ringing the doorbell and leave like a card saying you weren't at home, so we've taken your package back to the depot. Please come here and pick it up later. But I can assure you, this is utter bollocks. Postmen don't want to have to take the package back to the depot. That's just extra work, especially if you have to do everything by foot. The ideal workday for a postman or any courier is to be able to deliver every package safely inside the property and then go the fuck home without having to drop anything off at the depot. The sooner we can achieve this, the better. Postmen don't get to clock off and go home at a specific hour. They have to deliver everything or attempt to deliver everything, and they don't get to go home until they've completed their round, their walk. Whether it's completed at 1 p.m. or 5 p.m., there's no excuse. So they're all trying to get their work done as quickly as possible. It would never have occurred to me in the event that I encountered an open door to sneak into that house out of curiosity just to see what's in there. It would just be a waste of my fucking time, not to mention a potential crime. Even if it's not a crime, it would be something that the customer could complain about, and in the event that they did complain, it would be an instant sackable offense to trespass on someone's interior property, as well it should be. The only exception would be if I witnessed a crime. That's one of the perks of being a postman. Sometimes they are the first to witness a crime scene, or indeed a crime taking place. In that event, it's acceptable for you to report that crime to your line manager, and they will report it to the police. And pardon my spleen, but a man sitting in his own house with his knob out is not a fucking crime. Even if he's awake, even if he's standing in the living room, jacking it to the Discovery Channel or whatever, that's not a fucking crime. It's his house. It's his TV. It's his knob. So hippity hoppity, get off my property. If the man is unfucking conscious on the sofa and happens to have his knob out, how in anyone's world is that supposed to be a threat? Fuck you entirely. Not literally. Don't actually fuck you. Figuratively, fuck you entirely. This is mental. This is like that case in, I think it was Canada, where some woman snuck into a man's backyard and then she saw him naked through the window and then had him prosecuted for indecent exposure. Needless to say, this would never happen if the sexes were reversed. If a man snuck onto a woman's property and saw her in her birthday suit, he would get sacked on the spot and probably arrested on the spot and put on the sex offenders registry, never be employable again, and probably spend years in prison. But the worst this bitch gets is being sacked from DoorDash, and she still gets to complain that she's the goddamn victim. I hate this world. I don't know why anyone wouldn't hate this world. It's fucked. It's completely fucked. You could fix the immigration problem. You could fix all the racism problems. You could even fix all the wars. But we would still have this clown world fucking situation where a man is a criminal for looking at a woman and a man is also a criminal for being looked at by a woman. Can we please get around to this at some point? Anyone? Ever? No? Isn't this shit far crazier than any of that other shit? Might this be where all the other crazy shit is coming from? If this kind of craziness is acceptable, then it stands to reason any other kind of craziness would be acceptable. Absolute madness. Sorry, I need a nap. I need a drink and a nap and another drink and another nap. I need drink siphoned into my veins while I'm napping forever. I'm gonna go try that now. I'm gonna see what kind of MacGyver device I could knock together with a vacuum cleaner and a straw that could somehow pump alcohol directly into my liver while I sleep. Wish me luck. Or wish me my best possible fortune in the afterlife. Dr. Random Account Mountain News on Emerging Radio.
Just make sure you lock your front door and don't order any delivery. And then
In
feel free
regard
to
to
get
the
as
law,
drunk and as tired as you want.
in regard to the law, I got some bad news. A pretty big black pill enema for all you guys. I worked with a guy back in the 90s who was on a sex offender list for life because a girl who was on the street outside of his house in an argument with her boyfriend called police after he peeked out of his curtain to see what was going on in the street and said that he was parading himself around naked in front of the window. And he was arrested and prosecuted and convicted of a sex offense for that. So like just even if you're in your own home, if someone can see you from outside, they will consider your nudity to be public nudity. You know, and this is something that has bugged me ever since I learned about his case, because if he had been a woman and a man had called and said that, they would have arrested the man for voyeurism. But because it was a teenage girl and he was an adult man, and she said that, even though he disputed her story, he was convicted of exposing himself to her from inside his house behind his curtains. So guys, if you're going to order from any company that has deliveries and stuff, and you want stuff left outside the door, you should be able to expect that people will not come into your house and take pictures of you passed out, drunk, naked on your couch, and then post them online and call the police and accuse you of a crime. You should be able to expect that, but you can't. You have to lock your door. You have to protect yourself, because the state won't, and the public will treat you like you're the pervert, even though she took a photo and she posted it online.
All right. Well, that was all of our stories. And it was a super long sausage. What are you going to do? So I want to know what you guys think about all of these. Please feel free to leave us a comment and continue the conversations in the chat as well. We're going to be going to, because this has been a pretty contentious incident, we're going to be going to the patron show. We're going to be looking at some of these TikToks, which are response videos to the DoorDash SA girl, or at least the girl who claimed to be SA'd by an unconscious man. And we'll see like what the cope looks like on TikTok. So if you want to join us for that, go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to become a member. And you will see you hopefully in the patron show. Let me just double check to make sure I'm not missing any super chats or anything like that. Looks good. No super chats, no super chats, no rumble rants. Okay, cool. So anyway, with that said, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show today. And I want to thank Hannah and Mike for joining me. And, you know, so that we can talk about these things, because I think that it's absolutely crucial that we have these conversations. And I'm telling you, I have it on good authority that we are having an impact. And this is a good thing overall. So anyway, with that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today, and please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next one. See you next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.